There are so many lists online of the greatest synthesizers ever, like the Prophet 5, the Minimoog Model D, the CS80, and all of those deserve to be on there for a reason. But those are the safe answers. Coming back from Superbooth 2026, I was so inspired not just by the synths that seem to do everything right, but by all the creative builders and inventors that push the boundaries forward with their instruments and view synthesizers not just as a tool for making music, but as a way of artistic expression in and of itself. In this video, I want to celebrate the synthesizers that I think are the coolest and most unique boundary-pushing synths from each of the major brands. While they might have not been the most commercially successful or been on as many hit records as their counterparts, these synthesizers, in my opinion, are the most unique and coolest synths from each of the respective companies. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with my picks. I'm sure I'm missing some really cool ones, but without further ado, let's get started with Roland. Now, the obvious pick for Roland would be the Jupiter 8, which is iconic, probably one of the most famous synthesizers ever, but in my opinion, I think that the most cool and unique synthesizer from Roland is the Jupiter 6. Tell me if I'm crazy in the comments, but if tomorrow someone told me I won the lottery and I could either have a Jupiter 8 or 6 as a prize, I'd take the Jupiter 6. Released as the underrated middle child between the Jupiter 8 and the obviously famous Juno line of synthesizers, the Jupiter 6, in my opinion, is very, very unique because of its multi-mode filter, which was a first for Roland, and the ability to do analog cross-modulation to thicken up the sound. If I'm not mistaken, this is one of the first polysynths that had this style of analog cross-modulation, and it really creates an interesting dystopian sound. Before we move on to my second pick, you'll notice that demo wasn't from me, and that's going to be the case for each of these synths because I unfortunately don't own them. So definitely go and check out the channels linked in the description below and check out their amazing demos if you want to learn more about each of these underrated synths. Moving on to Korg. Now, Korg have so many iconic and cool synths, and I could have just as easily picked the Korg Monopoly or the Korg PSS 3000, the legendary polysynth that's being reissued in small batches, but I had to go with probably the most mainstream pick of the cool Korg synths, which is the MS20. Now, the Korg MS20 for me is easily the coolest synth they've made, and it's one of the only synths on this list that was actually also a commercial success, but it still deserves a spot on here because it has a glorious sound, largely due to its very unique dual filter system with a high pass and low pass filter of the Salin key circuit. Essentially, the Korg MS20 can go seamlessly from these absolutely beautiful sounds to some of the coolest and most modern sounding bass design you've heard. That beautiful demo showcases the pretty side of the MS20, but where I fell in love with the MS20 is from one of my favorite producers, John Hopkins, who famously used it for his breakout album Immunity for almost all of the synths, including the iconic bass line in Open Eye Signal. Before we move on, no, this is not an ad break, but my debut album, Concrete Cuts by Miles Away, is coming out next Friday, and if you like the music that you hear in my videos and my demos, it would mean the world if you listen to this album. It's my debut album. I poured my heart and soul into it. It's a concept album about what we lose by growing up, and it features all sorts of really cool synth parts, including a ambient track on the UDO Super Gemini and Third Wave. ton of glorious, warbly Prophet and Oberheim pads. So that's all I have for you today. No ad read, no sponsored stuff. Just if you like my music and want to check it out, it's out now, and I'd appreciate you listening. Up next is Moog. Now, the Model D is arguably still one of the coolest synthesizers ever, despite its popularity, but for my pick, I went with something a little different. I think that Moog are at their absolute coolest when they create synthesizers that don't fall into their monosynth architecture that made them so famous. The Matriarch was the first thing I thought of, but I had to go with the iconic Memorymoog. Not only does the Memorymoog have a fabled legacy because of its absolutely massive sound and extreme pain in the ass to keep maintained and going, but there's also a really tragic story around the Memorymoog where it was Moog's big hurrah to save themselves from bankruptcy, and the ability that the engineers created this insane synth that crammed 18 Moog oscillators into one package in that era when oscillators were way more unstable, things broke down, there was no surface mount technology. It's truly one of the most ambitious synths ever, and it also happens to just be so cool. Like, who doesn't love the idea of a gigantic, all-in-one, colossal Moog polysynth? I'm going in a rough chronological order here, so make sure to stay till the end because number 6, in my opinion, is the coolest synth on this list. Next up is Sequential. Now, just like the Model D with Moog, the Prophet 5, right up here, it's the most iconic polysynth, one of the most iconic polysynths in the world for a good reason. And again, it has an extreme cool factor as well, but it's too obvious of a choice. So my choice for Sequential is going to be the Prophet VS. Now, similarly to the Memorymoog, the Prophet VS tells not only a story of extreme innovation, but also one of a final hurrah of Dave Smith really trying to salvage the company during the era of the dominance of the DX7. Now, the Prophet VS is so unbelievably ambitious that even looking at it today, it still feels ahead of its time. Not only did Dave invent vector synthesis here, which is just yet another thing he casually added to the synthesizer world, what an absolute legend, RIP, but the core idea of the Prophet VS and the sound was the inspiration for a lot of Dave's later on down the road synths, which we'll talk about. Segueing perfectly into Dave Smith Instruments. So after Sequential sadly went bankrupt in the 80s and Dave lost the name of his company, he came back after a break with Dave Smith Instruments. And just like Sequential, Dave Smith Instruments are probably best known for the Prophet, only this time it's the Prophet 6. But Dave Smith Instruments are not, in my opinion, at their best when they're designing safe polysynths. Dave Smith Instruments to me feels like Dave's true unbridled creativity, and that's why the coolest synth that Dave Smith Instruments made was the Poly Evolver. Now, a quick story on the Poly Evolver. This, I might be biased, is one of the synths that I regret not buying when I could. I saw a Poly Evolver come up used several years ago and I hummed and hawed and didn't get it. And then, of course, James Nathan Jones, who you'll hear some of his demo in a sec, posted an amazing Poly Evolver video, and I immediately regretted not getting it because the Poly Evolver is one of the most creative and innovative and synth nerd focused synthesizers period. The Poly Evolver uses 4 oscillators per voice. That's right, 4. And 2 of them are analog, 2 of them are digital, and each pair of oscillators gets panned left and right to create a full stereo voice. That's right, each of these pairs of oscillators gets their own filter, so everything about this synth is geared in stereo. The limitations of this are that it is only 4 voice, which by today's standards is really limiting, but I think the coolness factor and the ambition factor of trying to make a genuinely stereo polysynth, did I mention it has a crazy parameter locking sequencer as well, which again was pretty rare at the time for a polysynth, makes this by far the coolest synth that Dave Smith ever made. So I was editing the video and wondering why it felt short, and I realized I forgot Oberheim. I don't even know how I could forget Oberheim. I was just playing my OBX8 this morning, and yet somehow I completely forgot Oberheim. So the coolest synth for Oberheim, again, the obvious choices would be the OBX, OBXA, OB8, 2 voice, 4 voice. I'm going with the Oberheim Matrix 12. The Oberheim Matrix 12 is the first synthesizer to ever have a fully programmable mod matrix, and it was truly like revolutionary because previously, before the Matrix 12, the only way you could get that level of modulation was on a modular system or something like an ARP 2600. The Matrix 12 revolutionized the idea of the ultimate uber polysynth, and just like so many other synths on this list, unfortunately, it also marked the end of Oberheim. I think the moral of the story here is that unfortunately, you can be a trailblazer and it can take a little while for the market to catch on because nowadays, almost every single flagship polysynth has a mod matrix, and all of that is owed to the Oberheim Matrix series. All right, next up is Elektron. And you might be surprised if you know my channel, but in my opinion, this is the coolest synth of this entire list. Elektron's coolest synth is not the Digitone or Digitact, it's well before that, it's the Monomachine. Long before the Digitone, this digital oddball synth combined strange lo-fi algorithmic synthesis engines, including text-to-speech, into a rigid yet powerful Elektron sequencer. The Monomachine's character is distinctly harsh and metallic, and chances are, if you didn't know what it was today and you weren't feeling inspired, you probably wouldn't like it if you heard it at a store. But that's what makes it such a cool instrument. Founders of the hyperpop genre like Sophie were able to take the Monomachine and its extremely unique sound character paired with its absolutely wild sequencer that's so far removed from anything that you could do at the time with plugins and create an entire new genre of music called hyperpop. One of my core messages of this channel is limitations breed creativity, and looking at the career of hyperpop artists, most notably Sophie, rest in peace, it's just absolutely incredible to see what this little harsh box of metal did for an entire genre of music. Getting a little nerdy for a second, just to give you an idea of how powerful this little weird box of harshness was when in the hands of a capable producer like Sophie, I tried my hand at remaking one of Sophie's tracks that was made, as far as I know, on the Monomachine. Even with tutorials on this sound and working way too long on this, I found it really hard to replicate the character of the Monomachine. That to me is a sign of a really cool synthesizer where somehow, even still being totally digital, it managed to have its own sound palette, workflow palette, and spawn an entire genre. Let me know in the comments below if you can think of anything else that had such an impact on a niche genre of music like this. Don't say the Roland TB303, that's cheating. Give me something I don't know and maybe I will make a video on it. Well, let me know, what did I miss? Do you like these kinds of videos? Should I do a part 2 with more manufacturers? I'm super curious to hear what you think are the coolest and most unique synthesizers in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Again, thank you so much if you decide to listen to my debut album, Concrete Cuts, out May 29th everywhere. I'm gonna be live premiering the entire continuous album here and hanging out in the chat when the album drops on the 29th, so make sure to be around for that, and I'll answer any synth questions you guys have about the tracks. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Devin Belanger, and I will see you in the next video.